Hi, everyone. Welcome, one and all. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This InOrbit webinar is, of course, entitled Kärcher and InOrbit, the future of autonomous cleaning. We really appreciate you joining us. My name is Jeff Chapman. I am the Content Marketing Manager at InOrbit, and I'll just be your MC setting things up for today. As we mentioned, today we'll be looking at the automation and its evolution in building services and the cleaning sector, of course, some of the unique challenges to that space, and the exciting moves that some of our partners especially are taking in the space. Of course, as I hinted at, we have some fantastic guest speakers with us here today. Our friends from Kärcher will be joining us. So with that, of course, we will be discussing a little bit about the recent InOrbit and Kärcher collaboration announcements. Now, if you're new to one of our InOrbit webinars, I'd just like to give you a little bit of information about us. InOrbit offers a secure, cloud-based, hardware-agnostic robot fleet and data management platform. We help robot makers and their customers develop, deploy, and operate smart robots at a global scale. Now, central to what we do is a dedication to effective robots, or robot operations as we call it. It's central really to automation as it scales really in any sector. A little bit of housekeeping for today before we get going. This webinar will be 45 minutes long. We will be recording it as well, so if you have any colleagues who weren't able to join us today, not to worry, we will send out a link with a VOD to today's webinar, which you can share with them as you wish, of course. And if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat. We will carve out the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar for your questions. With that, I think we're about ready. I'd love to bring up our host for today, the co-founder and CEO of InOrbit, Mr. Florian Pestoni. Florian, if you could join us. Now, Florian, of course, comes to us with over 15 years of product experience at startups to enterprise companies, managing especially media products and SaaS products from companies like Microsoft, Adobe, Facebook. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we are lucky to have him driving the vision and the ship here at InOrbit. Thank you very much, Florian, for joining us.
Wow, Jeff, that was a very nice intro. Thank you so much. But let's turn the spotlight on our two great speakers that we have today. Let me start introducing Marco Cardinale. He is the VP of Floor Care and Robotics at Kärcher. Has 14 years of experience in cleaning technology industry, and he spent more than 5 years already working on autonomous cleaning solutions. At Kärcher and other places, he's held various leadership positions in product development, product management, business development, corporate strategy, M&A. Sounds like Marco has done it all already. And he has a master's in international economics from the University of Stuttgart. And we're also joined by Felipe Garcia Lopez. He's the head of robotic systems and software engineering at Kärcher. 10 years of experience in R&D, working with AMRs, with autonomous mobile robots, in intralogistics, cleaning, and also an impressive academic background. He has a master's in mathematics and computer science and a PhD in mobile robotics, which I didn't know what was a thing, from the University of Stuttgart. Now, by way of intro, let me introduce Kärcher, the company, and I'll lean on Marco and Felipe to pronounce it correctly. I think there's the American pronunciation, Kärcher. There's the Kärcher. You'll get it right for us. But for those of you who don't know it, it's a huge leading provider of cleaning technology worldwide. 3 billion euro a year, family-owned enterprise. Over 14,000 employees across 80 countries. 50,000 service centers, which is mind-boggling. in really all countries to make sure that there's continuous and comprehensive supplies to customers around the world. So really a global enterprise. So again, we're super lucky to have these two fantastic speakers with us today. Maybe would either of you want to add anything else to that intro, so people get a better sense for you?
Thanks, Florian. First of all, thanks for having us here, for inviting us. And you were correct. We say Kärcher in English, so we can stay with that. That's probably easier for all. No, maybe what we can add is that Kärcher is indeed a B2B and a B2C business. And this is also how we do robotics. So since 1.5 years, we decided to also form a kind of a competence center when it comes to robotics. And we do product development and also go to market for both the consumer and the professional robots, with the idea to maximize the synergies in product development, and also enabling us to use the resources in a fluid way where they are needed in the moment. Yeah. I think that's
awesome.
worth to add.
So let's just get right into it. Kärcher has a 80-year history, but now there's this thing about autonomous solutions, not just for Kärcher but for the market in general. So has that changed anything? Have the expectations in the public around cleaning changed with the introduction of autonomous solutions?
Yeah, definitely. I think the impact of autonomous solutions, especially when we talk about commercial cleaning, was quite significant, I would say. So, and the reason is simple. When we talk about facility management companies, building service contractors, I think they all have the challenge, if not a pain point, that there is a huge lack or even shortage of labor. And this is also accelerated by the thing that they offer more and more services to their customers. And therefore, the cleaning robots, or let's say autonomous solutions in general, address that point very well. And there's also this addition that the cleaning robots offer benefits such as the consistency of the cleaning quality, and what we talk about today, lots of data that you can collect, and where you can also, I would say, create additional value to the customers. And this has changed a lot in the last years, and expectations towards this usage of data were increased.
Yeah, and Marco, at a previous webinar, we had someone that I believe you know well, Buck Ward from CyberClean, and Buck has an amazing history of 30 years trying to do autonomous cleaning, and he basically kind of like echoed what you mentioned, which is the tremendous change we've seen, an acceleration in pace in the last few years. I would say even the last 3 years. Has seen a lot of progress in that area. Now I know it sounds like you just wave the autonomous wand and then your machines become start cleaning by themselves. But I know there's a lot of work that goes into that, a lot of challenges. So maybe this one is perhaps more for Felipe. What are some of the kind of like the unique challenges that you've seen getting cleaning robots in particular? And I think we've all had some experience as consumers with like a Roomba, but we're talking about like industrial equipment and operations at scale, so it's quite different. So what have you learned, Felipe?
First of all, a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation also from my side, Florian. Yeah, I mean, in terms of what we do at Kärcher in terms of robotics, we try to develop our own IP there. We particularly for large floor care machines, and we try to avoid building from scratch. For example, it's rather about finding the right partnerships. It's rather about using the right off-the-shelf components in terms of hardware, sensors, CPUs, and even algorithms. So that's one of the things that we try to focus on, that we use existing components in terms of software and hardware to have a good basis, and then focus on application-specific capabilities of the robot. which we believe is a distinguishing factor, generating USPs for our product, in our case, for the cleaning application. So, for example, navigating really close to obstacles because we want to clean, we don't want to avoid obstacles necessarily, being able to recover from stuck situations, and focusing on the user experience. So we want to have a product that is easy to deploy, easy to use, even if there's changes in the environment. So so that's our approach in a nutshell. Nonetheless, the robots we were talking about today are complex machines, and they are deployed to a variety of complex environments. So so also part of our approach is that this is a product or a robotic platform that is constantly evolving, and we need to learn from challenging situations in the field. And that's why we need to set up a elaborate remote operations ecosystem that enables us to monitor all of our robots, because we push them out of the door when we produce them. It's not like, for example, the robots that we have are pretty similar to AGVs and intralogistics, where there's always people to maintain these robots. In our case, we need to be able to maintain them from remote. So that's also one of the reasons why we work with InOrbit in that regard.
And I think that's kind of like an enlightened view, I would say, Felipe, because I think we hear from a lot of companies in the robotic space without Kärcher's experience, where they're like, their idea is they're going to build a perfect robot in the lab. And when it's perfect, they're going to send it to the field and it will continue being perfect. And I think that's a harsh reality that will hit those companies when they're out in the field. So I think it's this concept of continuous improvement, as you were referring to, is super critical for all companies in the robotic space to embrace, I think.
Definitely, in my mind, it's not possible to create a perfect robot in the lab. So you need to be out there. Definitely, it needs to be a stable product. It needs to be a stable robot. It needs to have a low incident rates. Let's call it that. But you need to learn, because you can't test the variety of the different situations the robot will be in the lab.
And that was for sure.
Oh,
sorry, that was for sure a big mindset change for us, I would say, especially when you are a big global brand. That's the tough change that we need to go through, but it was worth it at the end.
And I was going to say, maybe continuing on what both of you just said, at the end of the day, all the magic that goes into making a robot be autonomous, the end users kind of don't care. They just want their floors to be clean, right? So I think there's a kind of like a slow evolution and another, big mindset change towards this idea of, autonomous cleaning as a service, like this idea that I'm buying clean floors, I'm not buying a machine. So curious what you're seeing in the market.
We can definitely confirm that. So we see automation as a driver of robotics as a service. Usually, as Felipe said, we talk about complex machines, and they go along usually with a service agreement. And by saying this, the tendency also of the customers towards such kind of business models is much higher compared to traditional machines. And at Kärcher, what we do, we promote robotics as a service over the traditional purchase. And also we founded our own financial solutions company, helping us to really push that into the market, as we see that as one of the key drivers for autonomous solutions. And what helps us there is also that other industry sectors, like we mentioned, intralogistics, the AGVs, they go the same way. So when we talk about these kind of customers, that helps us a lot, that they are used to this kind of business models. When it comes to the building service contractors, I think there's still some work to be done. But I'm sure that this will change with the autonomous cleaning getting more and more popular.
Awesome. All right, so maybe this is a good time to get a little geeky and technical. And maybe I'd love to maybe ask Felipe to share a little bit about the Kärcher B50, which is the product that you know, at Interclean a couple of weeks ago in Amsterdam, it was really kind of the highlight of the show, I would say. I saw, you know, throngs of people waiting to hear from Felipe and from others about the new Kärcher. So tell us a little bit about it, and again, just maybe look under the hood a little bit of like what were the specific challenges that you were trying to address here. I'll tell you, at least from my perspective, one of the things that I saw that was like really unique is how it can dock itself and empty the wastewater and refill it. Like it really feels truly autonomous. It doesn't just drive around, but it cleans autonomously, and including all the work that you need to do around it. So not to steal your thunder, but go for it, Felipe. You know, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I think it's for a company like Kärcher, it was a big decision to say that we want to create our own IP there in this market also, right? Because it's a challenging task to produce such a robot, and we're actually pretty proud of it. So, and we're really happy that we started the market entry now, and we're producing and we're selling. So this is really it's actually starting now with all that we talked about. So the after sales concept go into place now. In terms of, you know, what were the challenges there? I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint a specific situation. Robotics is hard in general. I think you know that, and I probably most of the participants here also know that. But the way we set up our teams at Kärcher, and then Marco, that's due to his you know, management, that we've been very lucky to work with talented engineers to build our robots. So finding the right system architecture, finding the right software wasn't actually the real issue. I mean, it was hard, definitely. The problem is rather the industrialization process behind it. So turning a proof of concept robot into an actual product. That's the hard part. That's, you know, industrializing your algorithms, industrializing your hardware and sensor setup, and industrializing also your mechanical design to, you know, to suit the robotic capabilities. So, and like I said before, additionally, the variety of environments that such a robot is deployed to, that's where the challenge is, and that's why we decided that this is a evolving product that has you know, a strong baseline now. But it will grow in terms of features, and it will grow in terms of degree of autonomy. In terms of the capabilities, I mean, we're talking about a scrubber dryer 50-liter machine. It has a multi-sensor system. We have LiDARs on it. We have 3D cameras on it. We have ultrasonics on it. It is an IoT connected machine. We have a functionally safety certified machine, so it is certified by a third-party agency that guarantees our customers that this machine is safe to the latest standards. So we could also say that this is the first machine that fulfills this whole range of new standards for automatic floor care machines. In terms of the USPs, I talked about that. We were focusing on ease of use in terms of the deployment. So a user should be able to deploy that machine on his or her own, even if the environment changes, if something has to be adapted. A user should be able to do that, and not a technical expert from Kärcher or one of our BSC or B2B contacts. Yeah, and in terms of the what is special about the cleaning, I think we're proud that the robot can drive very close to walls while being still functionally safe. That's a real you know, attribute there. We're able to recover from stuck situations, and we provide a full autonomy solution combined with a docking station. So this robot can run for hours, all night long, all day long, combining routes, releasing dirt water, you know, loading fresh water and charging batteries. And like I also said, this machine comes with an established remote operations installed using the InOrbit platform. And also Marco mentioned it, we try to allocate data from these machines, try to identify challenging situations, and learn from all the experience that these machines have, also in our headquarters, in our R&D departments, to make that product better.
I think, Felipe, one thing that it took me a while to realize, obviously this is pretty obvious to you guys, but there's this kind of like natural tension between, you know, if you want to cover more space, then you need a bigger machine with bigger tanks and everything. But then that machine can't go into tight spaces because it's big. Versus a smaller machine, it can go into the, you know, close to a wall, go into an aisle, for example, in a supermarket or a warehouse. But then it will run out of water. So you've basically broken that trade-off by saying, let's do both. Let's make a machine that's small and nimble, can get into tight spaces, and can also go on forever by, you know, going back, refilling, and starting again. I think that's, I don't know, to me as a non-cleaning expert, seems like a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, also maybe Marco, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but I think it was definitely the goal for this machine to have a broad range of target environments. So it is designed to be able to drive in supermarkets, at airports, in shopping malls, but also, and that's where we see our you know, our main target group is production environments, warehouses, logistic environments. And coming with the docking station and the way we implemented it, it's, you know, the range of autonomy is, you know, like I said, it can run for hours.
I mean, with the high autonomy degree, I think you can get away from this typical argumentation of productivity in terms of area performance. When you think about that, we recommend the robots to be used in these environments when there's not much traffic, because then you have the highest efficiency. So we talk about nights, or maybe let's say in the morning, early morning or late evening. And then because we have the charging option with a lithium-ion battery, the area performance is not that crucial anymore. But what is crucial is that most of the area is covered and cleaned when the customer returns. And that's why we decided to go first with that kind of platform.
Awesome. So maybe Marco, while we're chatting, you know, we got into the more technical aspects of it, but I know from talking to you that there's a concept you call dynamic cleaning, and I'd love to have you kind of share that with the audience here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I hope nobody is disappointed that I'm saying autonomous solutions are really key, but not everything to us. Yeah, so we think it's key for the cleaning sector to have autonomous solutions, and so they are for us as a global market leader. But what we see is that robotics is just an integral part of what we call a dynamic cleaning. So what is it about? So we expect that the commercial cleaning moves more and more away from what we say standardized, fixed cleaning plans, cleaning schedules. I mean, the most typical example is always the restroom cleaning at airports. So in the past, and even I think nowadays, you can see this paper in the restrooms saying that it was cleaned every hour by a cleaner, and he or she has to sign that the restroom is cleaned. And this is something that doesn't make sense to us, because the cleaning happens independent from the frequency and also independent from the status of the cleanliness in that restroom. So our idea is that we use sensors in objects, in buildings, indicating the status of cleanliness, or giving us at least indications about the frequency of the people, etc. And then this was also the reason why we went with a docking station. So assuming that you have a robot with a docking station, the sensor could trigger the cleaning. And then, of course, the cleaning happens fully autonomously when you have the docking station involved. And then instead of, let's say, every hour, you might clean only 3 or 4 times a day, but you clean when it's really needed. And at the end, what happens? You increase efficiency, but you also make sure that the customer's sustainability is improved. And that is our idea or our understanding of what we call dynamic cleaning. And this was an example, but we think this will be the direction the whole cleaning industry will move towards too in the next years.
You know, Marco, we work with tons of robotics companies in different verticals, different solutions. And I think this, if I can spot a couple of trends, one is that I would say if I think about the evolution of autonomous mobile robots, not just, you know, for cleaning over the last, let's call it, you know, 5 years, maybe a little longer. Initially, a lot of the focus was, can I make a robot that moves around without bumping into things, right? And that's fine, you know, that's where you have to start. But I think now the industry is maturing and realizing some of the additional benefits, which is robots are data machines in their own right. They collect a lot of information that can be used for more than just not bumping into things, you know, navigation. But the other is they can also be driven by data, right? So data flows both ways. And I think, you know, as you explained so well with dynamic cleaning, I think there's a lot of dynamic other things that need to be done, right? Dynamic delivery and material handling and so on. Now, what gets interesting is in a shared environment where you have multiple of these tasks, right? You may have, I don't know, for example, an airport. Obviously, it has to be clean, and you know, amazingly, airports look pretty spotless usually. But there may also be a duty-free shop where they need to take those you know, tax-free booze to the gate or perfumes or whatever. I never buy at duty-free shops, but other people do. So there's a lot of stuff that's moving around an airport, and now you have these different types of robots. Same thing in a warehouse, right? You know, the main job of a warehouse is to move packages around and pallets and so on. So you have forklifts, you have different types of robots, you have inventory robots, but there's people around, so you have to clean the space. So I think what we're starting to see is as companies embrace autonomous machines more and more, they kind of need a way to make all of that work together, and you know, starting with peaceful coexistence, right? Not getting in each other's ways. And I can tell you, we've seen through our data things that I would say look hilarious to watch, but they're not good from an efficiency point of view, which is in a tight space, having, you know, two autonomous robots coming at each other. And we call it the robot dance, right? Because there are no rules. Like with people, we developed all of these social norms to pass each other safely. Robots are not there yet. So I think there's this need for coordination or orchestration that we're starting to see as the industry matures.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe you can share also with us one point that I like very much is about the incident management, because when we talk about the degree of autonomy, I think we all know what is the worst thing is that the robot gets stuck or gets lost or whatever. So I think this topic is key, and it I think both impacts the machine itself, but also maybe the operating platform that InOrbit is offering. Can you share a few words with us on that?
Yeah, and I think I would tie it back to what Felipe said earlier, which I call an enlightened position, which is you don't assume your robot will be perfect. Which is, you know, as an engineer, it can be crushing, but it's the real world. So the way, you know, the conceptual model I have, and the numbers may vary, but if you can get your robot to be, 90% autonomous. So 90% of the time it's autonomous. You're actually doing really well, right? By industry standards. And some people would claim it's much higher. Some people really are much lower than that. So it's the interesting part is that getting that last 10% to work autonomously all the time is going to be, you know, I would say 90% of the effort, but it's probably like 150% of the effort. So that last aspect of you know, getting to full autonomy is really hard. We've seen it with, you know, self-driving cars, for example, or autonomous vehicles. I think the realistic way of approaching that is to say there will be incidents, there will be things that happen in the real world that the robot will not be able to respond to on its own. So you build resilience into the operation of the robot, and you don't need to do everything on the robot itself. So by having a connection to the cloud, all of a sudden you open up many more possibilities. You're also bringing in, you know, so there's a space that has done a lot over the years, which is the DevOps space in the cloud, right? Where you really plan for all of this, you build resilience. So bringing some of those best practices and that way of thinking is part of what we want to do with InOrbit. We call it RobOps for robot operations instead of DevOps, but it's some of the same idea that, like, you want the system to be working well most of the time, but you also want to be able to respond very rapidly. So a couple of things that, you know, people should measure are you know, these are well-known metrics, but, you know, mean time to detection and mean time to resolution. So that goes straight to incident management, right? So we've seen cases, not with Akira, but we've seen cases out there where, you know, you may have a forklift, an autonomous forklift that was supposed to carry a pallet from one end of the warehouse to the other. Let's say it got mislocalized, or, you know, couldn't navigate around an obstacle. And I was just sitting there, like, you know, maybe for hours until somebody at the warehouse notices. So unless you have built that resilience, you're not realizing the potential of the robot. So if you can turn that from hours to seconds, then you can see the impact. And then if instead of just notifying someone, you can actually have someone resolve it remotely without having to walk around the warehouse or around the airport to resolve it, then the other metric, the mean time to resolution, also, you know, drops down to seconds. So obviously, you know, building the infrastructure for doing all of that at scale is not easy. And if you're, as a robot developer, if you're building the robot, that's already hard enough, you know, making it do its job. So where we try to come in is help with this infrastructure that augments what the robot can do on its own.
Great. I mean, this was key to us. We mentioned what the customer pays is a clean floor at the end of the day, and therefore the uptime, the degree of autonomy is key, no matter how you achieve it, to be honest, at the end of the day. Yeah,
yeah, I think that's maybe in talking to, I would say, you know, founders of startups, they feel sometimes that it's kind of like it's cheating to do it that way, because they think the robots should be able to deal with all of it. But as an end user, I don't really care. I want my clean floors, and I want them right now. And you know, and if I'm investing in an autonomous solution, that's all I care, that it does its job. So I think that's critical. I know we're getting short on time, and Jeff, I believe we wanted to make some room for questions.
Hey, Florian. Yeah, this is fascinating conversation, guys, but we do have a few questions in here right now. I have one for Marco about, you know, how Kärcher is approaching labor. have you guys experienced this as being problematic, or I think with the labor shortage going on globally, it's maybe less of a concern about taking jobs. That sort of fear has kind of gone away a bit. But how do you guys work with human labor in conjunction with your automation?
I mean, that's a big discussion, I think, in the cleaning industry, taking away jobs from cleaning stuff. But what we have experienced when we approach the market with our robot is really not the case. Yeah. So what we see is that shortage of labor is much higher. It's much more dramatic than maybe we all think, and it may differ from country to country. But at the end, what we see is that the automation, the cleaning robots, they will make sure and will help that human labor can focus much more on valuable tasks. Yeah. And as I said in the beginning, what we also see is that the facility management companies offer to the same customer much more services than they did 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah, because there's a consolidation in that industry, and therefore they need to free up time from their cleaning stuff for other jobs. So at the end, we have not experienced a single case where really a robot of us substituted, replaced a human labor. Honestly, we have not seen that yet. So I think this is a big discussion. It's an emotional discussion. I can understand it, but when we look at the facts and figures, I think it's probably not as big as it is treated.
Interesting. Oh, and can I ask, what about, just so I know, I'm interested, sorry, the approach to automation and considerations as a service in Europe versus America? You guys operate all over the place. Is it really varied as you look across the world, or are people generally, especially with the pandemic, looking at automation in the same way in the cleaning space?
I would say, as Florian also said, it accelerated a lot in the last 3 years, and I think this is overall the case and in all the regions. But I would still say that, for example, the US and maybe also Japan, Singapore, those 3 countries are a little bit ahead when it comes to commercial cleaning and automation, ahead of Europe, I would say. So you can also see it, I think, in the numbers being deployed in those markets. So there's not maybe a case or huge case in Europe that I know where there's a huge fleet of robots being deployed. So we talk about hundreds of robots at the same customer. Yeah. This has not happened yet, but we expect this to come in the next years. So a little bit ahead is US, and I would say in Singapore, Japan, but Europe will definitely also catch up.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Felipe, I have one here for you. What should be the biggest consideration for companies moving into automation, and what are you seeing people do wrong right now out there?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I don't know if we should judge other companies. I could explain what we as Kärcher, what we think what is important. I think we look at products also in terms of these robots from a customer's perspective. Like I said, we try to focus on customer perspective in terms of ease of use and ease of deployment. We see these as USPs that we develop for our products. So I think that's one focus point. I think what I see is that maybe other robotics companies try to make a perfect robot and also try to make a perfect robotic application rather than a custom experience. So we see a lot of the companies that have also cleaning robots that did need to have deployment by technical experts, and that's something that we try to avoid. So I would say that's one point. And the other is that what Florian you said, that's having like a remote operation setup is considered something like cheating. I don't see it that way, and I think you neither. So that we're on the same page here. But I think for us, and I mean we're not talking about for example teleoperation here. So it's rather than being able to identify challenging situations, and you need to have a setup for that. Otherwise, you don't know what's going on with all your robots in the field. So that's one thing why you need it. And then what you said is reducing response times in terms of incidents, and that's also not in terms of what we do here or what should be done is maybe some processes in your algorithms are a bit discrete. So sometimes it's just the one way or the other. It's not an automated bridge between. So, and then sometimes it's not that bad to have someone look over and say, oh, let's do that sequence of maybe motions or recovery strategies. And by doing that, by identifying the situations that happens, then you can automate that also. So you can make your robot better over time, right? So this, I think that's something that could be, you know, I believe that robot operations is a key feature in deploying these robots. So I like the term also RobOps. We adopted it actually. So maybe that's my 2 cents to that question.
Jeff, if I can chime in on this question from the audience, I think one thing I would mention, and I think I tend to mention this in many of these webinars, is I think you see a lot of people coming into robotics with a great passion for the technology, right? And you know, at the risk of trivializing it, you know, they're like, let's go build a robot. What is it for? Who cares? It's a robot. And then, you know, they go looking for a problem. I think, you know, something that Felipe mentioned already is, you know, think about the solution, the end user, and what their needs are, and start from there, and then work backwards towards the technology, because otherwise you end up with, you know, solutions that may be too complex, or maybe you stayed in the lab for too long, right? You should have gotten out there and, you know, be a little embarrassed, especially if you're a startup, right? If you wait for perfection, you're going to run out of money. So that's not a problem for Kärcher, but we see a lot in, you know, across different industries. The flip side of that is, I think there's more and more competition right now, right? It's easier to build a robot than it was, you know, 3 years ago or 10 years ago, definitely. So you see a lot of companies coming in. What's going to be your differentiator, right? Is it, like, one of the things that Felipe, you mentioned is how to make this machine very robust and industrialized. It's, you know, it's a harsh environment in which it operates. We've seen things like people on purpose running into robots because it's fun, right? We don't condone that violence against robots, but people will do it anyway. So I think it's just thinking about how chaotic the world is maybe, you know, my recommendation for roboticists.
Right. We're just about to hit our wall. Just, Marco, I'd love to give you the last word. Any lessons learned? Any insight? What's on the horizon for Kärcher you'd love to share or tease to the audience?
I mean, what Florian mentioned about, let's say, different types of robots at the same facility, the same building, if you combine that with our vision of dynamic cleaning, I think then you are very close to what we think will happen the next year. So this is for sure something that I also recommend others to look into. This will definitely change things because it will not happen that there is a customer side where you have just a robot from one manufacturer, as the automation takes place in every industry. So I think this is something really key for the future, and we will for sure look into that.
Amazing. Awesome. That's fantastic insights, guys. I really appreciate everyone's time today. With that, we are out of time, unfortunately. I would really love to thank so much our special guests. You guys were amazing. And thank you so much to everyone for attending today's webinar. As a reminder, we'll send out the video of today's broadcast in a few days, so keep a lookout for that. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time. So long, everyone.